Tonight, a rare moment of bipartisan agreement. A majority of both Republicans and Democrats are ready to send Joe Biden out to pasture. In fact, according to CNN, only 3 out of 10 Americans believe that Biden deserves to be reelected. And for good reason. Joe Biden is one of the worst presidents in American history. Just this week, a major new report found that Biden's green energy policies are endangering our national security and increasing America's reliance on China for critical raw materials. And still, Biden is forging ahead on a radical proposal to crack down on gas-powered cars with insane new environmental regulations. Meanwhile, a new report from NBC News found that China did, in fact, gather sensitive intelligence from the spy balloon that it piloted over nuclear sites and military installations in the continental United States. Quote, China was able to control the balloon so it could make multiple passes over some of the sites, at times flying figure-8 formations, that's my favorite, and transmit the information it collected back to Beijing in real time. Of course it did. Keep in mind, Biden refused to shoot down the balloon for more than a week when it was not over the continental United States. And in the Middle East, after 2 years of placating Iran, 4 separate attacks from Iranian-backed militants killed a U.S. contractor and left many U.S. service members with severe brain injuries. There is no doubt Americans at home and abroad are less safe under Joe Biden. Joining us now with reaction, Fox and Friends Weekend co-host Will Cain and former U.S. Senator and Ambassador Scott Brown. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Happy Good Friday. I know we're leading into the Easter weekend. Another reason to be grateful and to stand up for what this country stands for. Will, let me start with you. You know, what I mentioned was just a kind of a snippet of the fresh hell that we got delivered from the Biden administration in the last couple of weeks. Tell me what your thought is as we barrel into 2023.
You know, Tammy, I think my biggest takeaway is, one, that we are governed by very unserious individuals who have a priority list that resembles that of college sophomores. They think priorities are the world's temperature, that our national security is dependent upon controlling the world's thermostat while ignoring the threats that literally hover above our heads in figure-8 patterns, transmitting real-time data back to China. The history of humanity, by the way, when it comes to national security, is a threat from other tribes. The other tribe in this case is one that wants to dominate the world economically and ultimately through self-determination and power. And Tammy, if it does play out to the priorities of these college sophomores, that we turn the entire economy into EVs and turn down the fossil fuels, we will be granting China not only self-determination, but power over the world. The minerals that dictate that EV behavior, that go into those batteries, not only are in China, but are in essentially Chinese colonies in South America and in Africa. So as long as we continue to focus on trans issues or climate change, right, we will lose when it comes to national security.
Yeah, that excellent point. Ambassador, you know, we've got a week here with a bunch of distractions, if you will, including the arrest of a former president. You've got these almost riots on some college campuses with trans activists. And yet we also, what I listed, a lot of people might not have heard about the attack in Syria and the injuries to our troops. I mean, it's kind of a shocking dynamic. The economy is still in a very strange place, that something isn't quite right with what's going on. Tell me your sense of things when you look at what we see, what the media seems to be focused on versus what's happening to the world and to us here at home.
Well, when you say something seems not quite right, I think it's more than that. I mean, we've seen it for almost 2 years now. The lack of direction, the overreaction or underreaction, depending. You see what's happening with China. Joe Biden's never been strong on China. And the whole balloon, listen, I served 39 years in the military, the last 4 at the Pentagon. I retired as a colonel. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to know what was happening and to make sure it doesn't happen. We should have shot that thing down before it even entered our space. And once we knew what it was doing, let's just say hypothetically it was an errant weather balloon. All right, once it started doing figure-8s, you got to shoot it down. It's a no-brainer. The whole. Listen, I think we need to protect our planet, okay? But I don't think that the White House should be picking winners and losers. I say goodbye to your gas cars, your lawnmowers, anything to do with gas. And by the way, an electric vehicle is about 64,000, gets 234 miles per charge. A gas car is about 26,000. $400,000 gets about $434. So there's no opportunity for the average American who's struggling, making paycheck to paycheck. And the things that matter, Tammy, you referenced it, aside from the trans and other issues, it's the economy, it's the border, it's the fact that banks, because of the high rise in rates, that they didn't do any stress tests and see how that would affect the banks. I mean, it's just like reacting to things that are just making our country weaker and weaker and weaker, and it's very, very disturbing to the average American.
You know, Will, it's almost, you know, I mention every now and then that even a broken clock is right twice a day. You've got to work really hard to be wrong all the time. And you know, we're going to be talking later in the show about this horrible Afghanistan, you know, security assessment. But back to what the ambassador was noting about, you know, we care about the planet. The irony of some of this action, like the EV stuff and the batteries and regulations regarding the vehicles that will only benefit China, which is the worst offender when it comes to destroying the planet and the environment. So on one hand, you do it in the name of saving the environment, and on the other hand, you're making everything worse. It does feel like it's deliberate. Do you think they're just dumb, or is this on purpose?
I think what they do, so I heard a different word from the ambassador that I think is going to help me answer that question from you, Tammy, and that he used the word react. So I think that truly what guides this administration is reaction to the perception of popular sentiment. Now, I don't think that means it's in reality popular. Right. I think within very small confines on social media or within the academic circles of maybe Ivy League schools, they can sort of stick their, you know, wet their fingers, stick it in the wind and see which way it's blowing. That's how you let, just to tie a ribbon around all this, that's how you let a balloon do figure eights over military installations, but then a few weeks later spend $2 million per missile shooting down hobby balloons over Alaska. You are reacting to the perception of what you think is popular. They don't have a principle that's guiding them, just a nebulous concept of progress, and progress defined by, hey, what's trending on Twitter?
Yeah, well, see, that's it. It's about winning a news cycle, right, Ambassador? You're an ambassador in New Zealand. You've been around the world. You've got military experience. We see all of these decisions. It seems to be winning a news cycle, keeping people distracted, while then effectively either misleading the people directly, you know, indirectly lying, whether it was about denying that inflation was going to be an issue, denying, you know, that we're going to have a problem with our oil reserve, as now Israel seems to be in trouble with Hamas again. You've got a deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia cuts their oil production. And Biden is sitting in the White House apparently sucking his thumb. And this affects all of us, just regular Americans on a day-to-day basis, and our national security on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, listen, I saw it firsthand as the ambassador in New Zealand, the Indo-Pacific, the South China Sea, the building and militarizing islands, changing the law of the air and sea that have been in place for hundreds of years, really infringing on the sovereignty of all those nations around that region. Yeah. That's number one. They are the biggest polluter. You nailed it. Their CO2 emissions by far lead the world. Their coal production, the way that they treat the environment is outrageous. And they're going to go and tell everyone else, oh, we're going to take care of it, don't worry. And we're getting hammered because we're not doing enough. Are you kidding me? And then you look at what's happening in the high-tech industry. 4 apps, Chinese-owned company apps, this past year, the highest producing, the highest grossing, the most activity of any apps whatsoever. China, make no mistake about it, they have a 30, 60, 90-year plan. We have a 3 to 6 to 9 month plan. They want to dominate us in every way, shape, and form. High-tech and industries and all, Ambassador, you name it, they want to do it, and we have to stop them. And we need a change of administration.
Look, they're eating our lunch, and not because, as the American people don't know what's going on, but because you can see what one president can do. And, of course, we've got to reverse that. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me tonight. I appreciate it.